Hello, friends. It's been 10 days now since Mr. George Floyd was killed by a Minneapolis police officer on the streets in broad daylight. And today is the day of the first of many memorial services that are mourning his death and remembering and honoring his life. And so today I begin by lighting a candle for George Floyd and for all others whose lives have been cut short by racial violence, especially racial violence from the police. I want to talk today about the spiritual practice of grieving. Last night we gathered in Zoom for a session to remember Mr. George Floyd and to listen to our heart's grief and to let that grief break our hearts open into a new expanded commitment to the work and struggle for justice. We know that grief is something that connects us to others. When the heart is broken open, it is newly awakened to the sorrow in others. And so I ask you in this day to consider what your heart's sorrow is teaching you in this time. If you are a white person like me, it is important not to let the weight of your grief sit with people of color, Black people, Indigenous people who have their own sizable share of grief, but rather as white people to let our grief break us open into new and deeper commitment and relationship. And if you are a person of color, a Black person or Indigenous person, I offer this poem for your grief, which is surely deep and old on this day and many. This is a poem from Teresa Soto called Let Your Grief Rise. Let your grief rise. I know you are afraid, having been told that such a strong emotion is unbecoming. Let the inconvenience of your tears flood the smooth glass box that holds your heart. Trust, beloved, trust that if, in case of emergency, you break the glass, your heart will always return home. Always. If ever our movements needed you, it is now. Bringing it, your grief, as an active, irrepressible testament to the utter, awe-inducing Yosemite, Yellowstone, Mount Hood holiness of human life, of each and every Black life. Bring your furious sorrow, splashed with tears of hope and no hope simultaneously. Do what you can with what you have where you are. And the grief you bring that keeps us anchored, smaller, but with the immense possibility of who we are together, bring that too. In the constellation of the actions that will bring our liberation, you and your twin-sized grief are a Beetlejuice of the sky, light for the way. Let your grief rise. Betelgeuse is the name of the 10th brightest star in the sky, the second brightest one in the constellation Orion. I've read that its name is based on the Arabic phrase, the hand of Orion. I invite you, whether you do this with writing or not, to consider where your grief is lighting the future work of your hands in the name of justice. What is shining from your broken heart that might guide your way forward from this day on? We are all being asked to speak truth to power, which we know must always begin with speaking truth to ourselves about our own response and responsibility to the events of our world and our times, to ask ourselves what is our unique complicity or part in challenging the events of our time. What is the truth that you hear today when you listen to the grief in your own heart? What wisdom rises from the suffering you have experienced and witnessed in these days of turmoil following George Floyd's death? How might your broken heart awaken in you compassion for yourself and for others? They are one and the same. And how might your grief and your anger urge you to join with others in the painful, difficult work, as the poet says it, of doing what you can with what you have and where you are? Where does your broken heart call you? To dedicate your hands to the work of justice now. If you are a person who uses writing as a spiritual practice, as I do, I invite you to take paper and pen and write from those questions, beginning with this prompt and following wherever it leads you. If I let my broken heart teach me, if I let my broken heart teach me. Complete that sentence and follow wherever it leads you, friends. May your grief break your heart open and keep it open for the work that must be done. Be steady, be strong. Let your tears guide you.